Joel Sherman here for Three Things, still at Met Camp. It is Tuesday when I'm doing this. On Monday morning, Steve Cohen talked to reporters for more than 20 minutes, sitting in the home dugout at the Met spring training facility on their main field. He went through a variety of topics. Before I get to three that I want to talk about today, I just want to say that most owners make themselves scarce. They don't talk to reporters, especially to the group, and give some kind of state of the state statement. And that Cohn does it a couple of times a year. He'll do it usually at the regular season a time or two, the beginning of the off season, here at the beginning of spring training. I do think it's valuable. It's the most important voice in an organization is an owner. The fact is most hide and let everyone else take the praise and the bullets, but especially the bullets. And Steve Cohen being out front for such an important property to so many sports fans, notably Met fans, I think is important. And I know as a reporter, I appreciate that he makes himself available in this way to tell us what he thinks. So why don't we go through kind of what he thinks one at a time. I thought the most interesting thing he talked about yesterday, by far, was how annoyed he was at that the team is here in his sixth year of ownership and partially hasn't won a championship. But more important, I thought, was he talked about the lack of consistency. And I think he thought with the amount of money he's invested, not just on the major league roster, but if you talk with anyone about from the Mets or other teams, how much money he has spent behind the scenes to try to speed up the Mets processes, minor league development, analytic stuff, sports science, etc. He has invested a ton, and I think he thought, hey, I understand that a tree doesn't grow in a day, but that this tree should have grown. And if you think about his ownership, what we've seen so far in the 5 years is year one is kind of the mulligan. Year two, they win 101 games and get to the playoffs. You think they're off and running. They spend a ton that off season. And by July, they're the big traders, Scherzer, Verlander, David Robertson, at that trade deadline because they're so disappointed. They come back in 2024. It is now David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, and the team makes this magical run to Game 6 of the NLCS. Once again, you think the Mets are off and running. Among other things, they signed Juan Soto to the largest contract ever in the offseason. They bring back Pete Alonso to great applause by their fan base. And I would dare say they were the most disappointing team in the sport last year, missing a six-team playoff field in the National League, finishing behind the Reds, falling apart steadily over the last 3.5 months of the season. And I think that at this point, Cohen talked about table stakes. He used a poker term. Table stakes is getting in the playoffs at the very least in 2026, that this has to become a consistent thing for the Mets. They haven't won a division since 2015. They've only been in the playoffs 11 times in their history. Only once in their history have they finished first in the same decade, 86 and 88. They've never put 3 playoff years together, and I think he believes what he wants is to be able to take a shot at a championship every year because they are that kind of team, consistently developing players at a high level, making great personnel decisions, and using his money for terrific players when need be, which brings us to point 2, which is the Dodgers of this all. Look, the Dodgers hover over the whole sport, not just the Mets. But it's hard to ignore. Steve Cohen did try to buy the Los Angeles Dodgers about 15 years ago, and the folks who have it now, the Guggenheim Foundation, they outdid him. They got the Dodgers, and another about decade went by, and then Steve Cohen got the Mets. So he didn't get the Dodgers. The Guggenheim's leadership, Andrew Friedman, hired Andrew Friedman. They've become the monster, and at his introductory press conference, Steve Cohen said they were the organization he wanted to emulate because of all the things that I just stated, that they are so good at every element of the game as far as team building. They use the money spectacularly, whether it's Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, etc., or They develop at a very high level to help their team and help themselves in the trade market. And they make sure one true decision after another. They're the two-time defending champions. And look, it has to hurt. He said that this offseason, the two moves that the Mets were unable to complete that really, really disappointed him, that he went to bed feeling lousy, were Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz. And by the way, those guys both ended up on the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's hard to ignore that those players went to the two-time champions, to the team that Steve Cohen wants to emulate, and the team that everybody in the sport is again chasing. It's 29-1. And Cohen talked about the idea of, hey, it's time to like I get it. I spend money also. We want to get to the playoffs and we want to see the Dodgers in the playoffs again. It's a hard act to outdo. They had a running start that Cohen didn't. They're on the West Coast. There is some advantages with weather. There are some advantages with Hollywood there. Obviously, New York is a glamorous, biggest city in the world. There's stuff also. But, their proximity, better proximity to Japan, their ties to Japan, it's a big advantage that Steve Cohen and David Stearns, etc., are trying to close. But it is the one that he is clearly obsessed with closing. Why don't I go to number 3? It's one that probably made news out of this as much as anything. Was he said that while he's the owner of the team, there will never be a captain. Now, the Mets definitely toyed with the idea of a captain last year, and that would have been Francisco Lindor. I think there was some tension in their clubhouse about that. I think Brandon Nimmo, who was the longest-serving Met, probably didn't love the idea that somebody else would be named captain. I do think the idea of the captaincy in baseball, it's not Luke Weaver with a Yankee bag stupid for a storyline, though, because that is so stupid. I mean, I don't think I commented. I'll give you my 10, 15 seconds on it. Players, I've done this for 40 years. Players show up with usually, they did the bag that fits all their equipment from the last place they were. Then the second they get to a new place, they get a new bag. And for everything but the last few years, when everybody has a camera on their phone, nobody knew that was going on, so nobody could be all aggrieved by it. So the idea that Luke Weaver showed up with a Yankee bag, or any player showed up with the bag of his last team, it's just, that's the bag where I put my stuff. They don't overthink it. They come to the new place. They get the new bag for the new stuff. If and when Luke Weaver leaves here, my suspicion is he'll go with a Met bag to wherever he goes next. And only those who are looking to be aggrieved will be aggrieved. The captaincy is not that level. But this isn't hockey where the tradition is so embedded in it, or there's a flip of the coin and you name the captains of your team in football because there's an obvious tradition that goes with it. In baseball, it's just obvious who the leaders are. Who do people gravitate to in a clubhouse? Who calls a meeting when it's needed? Who, when they speak, everyone listens to? Aaron Judge ended up being the captain of the Yankees. He was already the captain of the Yankees, but he ended up being the captain of the Yankees because it was the last bit of what could be offered when they were trying to keep him in free agency. And 9 years and $360 million plus the captaincy seemed to put it over the top. So that was a part of a deal as opposed to anything else. And it was already understood that even without a C or the title, he was the captain of the team. In baseball, it is not as big a deal as the other sports. What will happen in the Met clubhouse over time is it will become obvious who should lead and whose voice should carry the most. Maybe that's Francisco Lindor. It's not really in his personality, but Juan Soto's such a great player. Does he at some point say some stuff? Does Marcus Semien, who's been a leader in other places, even though he's new here, does he gravitate to leadership? This is the kind of thing that happens in an evolving way over time. And I really think it's such a non-issue who is wearing a C or named captain. It's extraneous. It's not a big deal. The bigger deal out of all the stuff that Steve Cohen talked about was how annoyed he was that the team hasn't been consistent yet, not who the captain is.